Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship.
What we're seeing here goes right at the crux of our very democracy. Are we still able to gather together to protest the decisions of the government? Or do we no longer have rights as Canadians to gather together, to assemble with other like-minded people, to express our collective political opinions? The Charter of Rights and Freedoms says we still have those rights, pandemic or not.
Whatever your ideology, the fact that a government organization can go into court without you present, seeking a whole host of remedies against you, including the obliteration of your fundamental rights to counsel, peaceful protest, freedoms of expression and assembly without you there, without even providing you notice that they're going to do so, is characteristic not of democracies, but of authoritarian regimes.
Friends, we're in an emergency. This is a 5-alarm fire. We have received another secret court order, granted in secret, just like the one granted against Pastor Art Pawlowski in Calgary to prevent him from holding Christian worship services. This time, a restaurant owner, a small town politician, and potentially everyone associated with them and the rest of us who disagree with the government could end up in jail for having a political protest. I'm going to show you an injunction that Alberta Health Services sought and won in secret yesterday against Chris Scott of the Whistle Stop Café and Glenn Carrott, the organizer of United We Roll, who is now running for mayor of Innisfail, Alberta, and some unnamed John and Jane Does, which could mean any one of us. Now, Chris Scott is the owner of the small town restaurant, the Whistle Stop Café. And as you know, he's been open in protest of the lockdown restrictions on restaurants during the pandemic shutdown. We've been helping Chris all along the way through fightthefines.com at no cost to him. We've put him in touch with a top criminal litigator. The government just a few days ago locked him out of his own restaurant and seized his property. So he's planning a big protest this weekend on the Whistle Stop property to naturally protest the lockdown restrictions in Alberta. Glenn Carrott is running for mayor of Innisfail, Alberta, on an anti-lockdown platform. And he's already received one lockdown ticket for hosting an Easter event earlier this year completely outside. We're helping him as well through fightthefines.com, fight that ticket in court. In a week from now, Glenn is planning a family fun jamboree to protest the lockdown. You see, these are protest events. It's political protest. But this order granted to the government just yesterday prevents political protest in Alberta. And the government got this order in secret, even though Glenn and Chris have a lawyer. And the government knows that. The government didn't give their lawyer a chance to respond or be involved in the process at all. They're being treated like terrorists or gangsters. The two men actually have the same lawyer, and that lawyer is Chad Williamson from Williamson Law. Chad's argued against Alberta Health Services lawyers in court already once on behalf of Chris. They know exactly who he is and how to get a hold of him. Okay, so that's the backstory. Here's the anti-free speech, anti-assembly, anti-political dissidents, anti-protest injunction that the government got against Chris and Glenn and anyone in Alberta. It was granted in the Court of Queen's Bench May 6th in Calgary on behalf of Alberta Health Services against the named people here, Chris Scott, Glenn Carrott, and Jane Does and John Does. And it was granted by Associate Chief Justice Rook. It is hereby ordered that the named individual respondents and any other person acting under their instructions or in concert with them or independently to like effect and with notice of this order shall be restrained anywhere in Alberta from organizing an in-person gathering, including requesting, inciting, or inviting others to attend an illegal public gathering. Promoting an illegal public gathering via social media or otherwise, attending an illegal public gathering of any nature in a public place or a private place, which each have the same meaning as given to them in the Public Health Act. For the purposes of this order, an illegal public gathering is one that does not comply with the requirements in the current Chief Medical Officer of Health orders, including but not limited to the masking requirements, the attendance limits applicable to outdoor and indoor gatherings, and that's just 5 people outdoors now, and minimum physical distancing requirements. Any member of any police service or any peace officer is authorized to use reasonable force in arresting and removing any person who has notice of this order and whom law enforcement has reasonable and probable grounds to believe is contravening this order. Upon arresting any person pursuant to this order, law enforcement may detain such person until they may be dealt with in accordance with this order. Look at this. This is where, if you are involved in peaceful political protest in Alberta, and anybody, because they name Jane and John Doe in this, you can go to jail. You can be in breach of a judge's order, which puts you in contempt of court. And if you're in contempt of court, you can go straight to the slammer. Look at this. Any member of law enforcement who arrests, detains, or removes any person pursuant to this order is authorized to bring the offending party as soon as possible before a justice of the Court of Queen's Bench in Alberta, and the offending party will be required to show any reason why there should be no finding of civil contempt at a hearing before a justice of the Court of Queen's Bench. Issue a summons that requires the offending party to appear before a justice of the Court of Queen's Bench of Alberta as soon as possible, and the offending party will be required to show any reason why there should be no finding of civil contempt at a hearing before a justice of the Court of Queen's Bench, or release the offending party from arrest upon that person agreeing in writing to undertake to both appear in person before a justice of the Court of Queen's Bench at such a time and place as may be fixed for the purpose of proceeding against for contempt of court, or fixing a date for such a proceeding, and obey this order. So you could be released from jail as long as you agree to not exercise your constitutional rights to free expression or free assembly. Glenn or Chris or Jane and John Doe, which really could mean you or me, if any one of us organizes a political protest against the lockdown, or goes to a political protest against the lockdown, or even talks favorably about a political protest on social media in such a way that might encourage other people to attend one, we could end up in breach of this court order and ultimately end up in jail. This is the silencing of political dissidents in Alberta, the kind of thing they do in China or North Korea or Russia, some of the more oppressive regimes of the world. It's not something we normally do in a free and liberal society. I don't want to go to jail. I don't want Chris to go to jail. I don't want Glenn to go to jail. I want everybody who's watching this, actually, I just want everybody to have free speech in a free society. That's why we are going to fight this court order with everything we have. First of all, we certainly don't have secret courts here in Canada getting secret court orders, but now we've got 2 in Alberta. We don't block political speech using secret court orders, and we don't treat peaceful political activists like they are terrorists or dangerous gangsters. That's why we have Chad Williamson from Williamson Law working on this, and he's been working on it since he first became aware of it because he was blindsided. He didn't know. Chad's already been fighting for Chris for months as his Fight the Fines lawyer, and we're covering those legal costs with your help through your very generous donations to our civil liberties project, fightthefines.com, where we at Rebel News help people like Chris and Glenn and approximately 1,000 other people and businesses fight their lockdown tickets in court at no cost to them. Now, here's Chad to tell you what he's been doing to fight this un-Canadian anti-free speech injunction. Take a listen.
The actions of AHS here are egregious and constitute an attack on the rule of law, the principles of fundamental and natural justice, procedural fairness, and civil liberties. We were served late last night with an injunctive order prohibiting peaceful protests in public assembly up at the Whistle Stop. We were not served with any application, any materials, anything of any sort leading up to this hearing that we were not a part of. AHS made an application without any notice to us whatsoever only 2 days before these planned peaceful protests, knowing full well that the Whistle Stop was represented by counsel and knowing that it would be extremely difficult for us to get into court to challenge their application or to get it set aside after the fact. Whatever your ideology, the fact that a government organization can go into court without you present, seeking a whole host of remedies against you, including the obliteration of your fundamental rights to counsel, peaceful protest, freedoms of expression and assembly without you there, without even providing you notice that they're going to do so, is characteristic not of democracies, but of authoritarian regimes. When the government makes the rules and then uses those rules in a high-handed, reprehensible way, it offends the very notion of justice and fairness. We've already drafted and filed an application to have this order reviewed on an extremely urgent basis and are seeking a court hearing this afternoon to deal with the litany of deficiencies in procedure and law that would allow such an attack on fairness to take place. We'll provide everybody with further updates as they become available.
We have to fight this with everything we have, no matter the cost. And I promise you, the cost is going to be enormous. But we think it's worth it to defend the civil liberties of Glenn and Chris and me and you and every one of us who thinks that it is our right to assemble together to protest the decisions of the government. Glenn and Chris are political activists, reluctantly so. Chris reopened his restaurant as a form of protest that ultimately made the government reopen all restaurants again. Glenn took his form of protest all the way to Ottawa with the United We Roll convoy to express his discontent for the ongoing treatment of the Western Canadian oil patch. What we're seeing here goes right at the crux of our very democracy. Are we still able to gather together to protest the decisions of the government? Or do we no longer have rights as Canadians to gather together, to assemble with other like-minded people, to express our collective political opinions? The Charter of Rights and Freedoms says we still have those rights, pandemic or not. Conservative Premier Jason Kenney, his bureaucrats in Alberta Health Services, and a judge in Calgary all seem to think that those rights no longer exist for any of us. This is a battle for the heart of what it means to live in a free Western society. It's just not our right to have opinions. It's a right to be able to express those opinions in the public square. And sometimes the public square means in front of a restaurant that's already been chained up and seized by the province. I want you to be able to post on social media that you hate the lockdown and that you're not going to take it anymore. And I don't want that to be something that the police can come pick you up and send you to jail for. If you're able to help us in this fight for free speech for everybody, please go to fightthefines.com where you can donate to cover the legal fees to try to have this secret, sneaky, anti-Canadian emergency injunction overturned. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. Friends, this is an absolute emergency. If you'd like to help us defend the right to free assembly and the right to protest here in Alberta, please go to fightthefines.com as we try to have this emergency injunction overturned. And your donations there now qualify for a charitable tax receipt through the Democracy Fund, a registered Canadian charity. Again, that website is fightthefines.com.